All right, welcome everyone to tonight's Ask the CEO series. Today we're focusing on District 6. Before we start today, I'm going to review some items related to how to use Zoom. I know some folks may be used to it already, but sometimes a reminder can help. Share my screen here, and welcome to those on Facebook Live. All right, so most of you are familiar with Zoom, but for those who are not, there's a toolbar at the bottom where you can toggle your audio settings. It's usually on that left side of the toolbar. If you are having internet issues, you can also call in using the phone number on the screen and the last numbered portion of the Zoom link. That's the webinar ID. Now, tonight is going to be very interactive. You're going to have opportunities to ask your questions. To ask your questions, please enter them into the Q&A portal, which is on the toolbar. You can also alternatively raise your hand to ask a verbal question. When you raise your hand, I will see a hand icon next to your name, and I will enable your microphone. Make sure you unmute yourself after that. If you are calling in via phone, you can also do the same thing by raising your hand by pressing *9, and to unmute yourself is *6. We do not recommend that you put in your questions in the chat box. That tends to get buried real fast, and I tend to lose track pretty quickly. So again, please use the Q&A portal. All right, I'm going to stop my screen share here, and I'm going to introduce our Vice Chair. Let's see here. So I'd like to introduce to you Vice Chair Estremera, Tony Estremera from Valley Water's Board of Directors. Vice Chair Estremera represents District 6, which includes Alum Rock, Seven Trees, Mayfair, and the community south of Interstate 280 in San Jose. Please welcome Vice Chair Estremera.
Thank you, Albert. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this virtual meeting. Usually, of course, I like to meet with people, meet you in person, but we shifted to virtual meetings, as you know, because of COVID. It's important that we continue to stay connected. So that's why we're having this meeting tonight. This is an opportunity for me to introduce our new CEO of Valley Water to you, our community, and to provide an update at the same time on current Valley Water issues. So let's welcome our Valley Water CEO, Rick Callender. Rick?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair Estremera. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to not only be presenting to my community, but the actual district where I live. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that. You know, this is the actually the sixth, excuse me, of 7 of these events that I've had the pleasure to do throughout the Valley. You know, I grew up, a lot of people know I grew up in the Blossom Valley area, went to Santa Teresa High School in that area. But tonight I have the pleasure of presenting to the residents of Alum Rock, Seven Trees, Mayfair, the communities of south of Interstate 280 in San Jose, or what we call the area I live in called South Central San Jose. I'm right off of Center and Umberger, and I've been over here since for 20 years. Coyote Creek is my backyard. I can look out my window right now, and literally I see Coyote Creek. So a lot of my experiences have been here for the last 20 years. I live in the community because I'm from the community. I'm part of this community. So I want to thank everyone for joining us here tonight. So I do want to make this a two-way conversation. It's my pleasure to basically do something different, come out with, join the elected directors and be able to have them give the opportunity to meet the CEO. Just like Vice Chair Estremera pointed out, we would much rather be doing this in a community center and basically be able to meet with you. When we're in this community, we're in the Alum Rock, the Alum Rock School District, in their facility, and being able to pull the community in. I would love to be able to do that again, but unfortunately due to COVID-19, we're not able to do that. But still hoping to engage in a two-way conversation. You do have the ability, as was pointed out by Albert, to put information into the chat. So if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, please go ahead and do so. Please raise your hand when we get the opportunity. But I am hoping to have a two-way conversation with my neighbors, because that's, like I said, this is where I live too. So let me tell you a little bit about myself for folks that don't know me. I did mention that I grew up in the area, but I have been working for Valley Water for 24.5 years. I'm about to roll over into 25 years as a Valley Water employee. I came up to the government relations side of the house. I was the one that was representing Valley Water, the residents of Santa Clara County, with basically all local governments, elected officials. I was the one that was responsible for ensuring that we had representation at the federal, state, local levels, ensuring that underneath my tenure, we got a little over $500 million towards projects from Corps of Engineers and many other agencies. And that was the relationship of what I did. Prior to that, I was working at Economic and Social Opportunities. I worked there actually with Vice Chair Estremera. He was also an old Economic and Social Opportunities alumni under Tommy Fultro, unfortunately just passed away recently. Worked for Susan Hammer when she was mayor of San Jose. Unfortunately, that's another mentor of mine, unfortunately lost, as well as Ron Dellums. I worked for him when I worked in DC, and you know that you're getting older when a lot of your mentors have moved on, but that's still with us in spirit. In terms of education, folks have asked, and I go over this because people ask, Rick, tell me about your educational background. Well, I studied at California State University, Chico, industrial engineering and technology, emphasis in electronic and computer technology, studied at San Jose State, master's in public administration, and finally got a law degree from Northwestern California University School of Law, and I am a member of the state bar. So that's the education in the background. Bottom line, I joined this position on July 13th. I may be new to the CEO position, but let me tell you this. I am not new to Valley Water. I'm not new to the area. Like I said, my family moved down here in 1976. I was here for the floods of Alviso in 1982. My family lived right off of Canoas Creek. Canoas Creek has always spilled over into the creek when we're there. I understand. I grew up in the creeks. I grew up playing around the creeks. I grew up understanding the need to basically balance not only environmental justice with the environment. And that's why I sit in the seat where I do today, because those things, I think, made up who I am and made up the advocacy, the type of things that I fought for environmental justice and civil rights. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the projects in the community that I live in. And so these, it's good when you're home, you're talking to your neighbors. So some of the projects I'll be talking about tonight: Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project, the Coyote Creek Flood Protection Project, the Parallel East Central Pipeline Project, the Lower Silver Creek Interstate 680 to Cunningham Flood Protection Project, the Upper Penitencia Creek Flood Protection Project, and then finally Measure S. And I was kind of tied it into how does that work with all of these projects. So let's go ahead. I'm going to jump into Anderson. Many of you may be aware of the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project is one of Valley Water's highest priorities. This is something we've been working on for a while. I'm a CEO. You have my commitment as well as the board's commitment to continue to drive on this. We had recently a virtual public meeting to inform the community on the upcoming activities relative to the Anderson Reservoir and the dewatering and tunnel construction project. You may have heard on the news that October 1, just last week, basically was the day that we opened, not basically, but we opened up the outlet in order to be draining the outlet under FERC's order. FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Basically, they ordered us to draw down the reservoir to dead pool, which is basically an empty reservoir. And so that's what we began doing on October 1st. We are going to take this as the opportunity. We're going to start first constructing an outlet tunnel. And so that construction is expected to be done in 2021. Full completion of Anderson Dam is expected to be done in 2031. Through some of these meetings, people have said, Rick, Anderson Dam is your largest dam and reservoir. What in the world are we going to do about water? You can fit all 9 of your other reservoirs inside of Anderson. What does that mean? Well, truthfully, yes, when Anderson's full, and it allows us to supply drinking water to support almost 1 million people for the whole year. And the seismic retrofit of this project will hopefully get us back to where we'll be able to do that. I don't say hopefully, I should say we'll definitely get there, because we're going to get this thing done. And yes, there is an impact to our water supply. However, I do want you to be assured that we have enough water supply for this year, and we're prepared with other options to maintain our supply in the future. We've always had a diverse water supply portfolio, which includes groundwater, imported water from both the federal and the state sources, as well as recycled water. We have a water bank, and it's called Semi-Tropic Water Bank in Kern County. That holds 350,000 acre feet of water, and it allows for us to serve about 3.5 million people for 1 year. So that's what we actively have, but we'll continue to explore other sources of water from outside the county as we move this project forward. And hopefully we will not see a water supply shortage. I think we have very strong policy leaders that ensure that we'll be able to have a strong supply of water regardless of where we are. Moving on to Coyote Creek. At the same time when we're doing Anderson Dam, what we're going to be doing under the FERC project is making sure that we have flood protection on Anderson Dam. So as we open up the outlet, we want to make sure that those that live along Coyote Creek, as I do, have flood protection. So that's one of the first things that we're doing is under the FERC order compliance project, ensuring that we are providing the flood protection that would provide for protection when the outlet is open. That's the number one thing that we're doing. But the second phase, the remaining phase, that's the first phase of Coyote. The second phase of Coyote Creek Flood Protection Project will be done by the end of 2025. Staff is currently working on project design and alternatives for Coyote Creek. We're going to be reaching out to this community again in the next few months to update everybody on the project's progress. One of the things, and this is my community too, I live about 1.5 miles from Rock Springs. I've been here since we bought our house in 2000. You know, I've heard many comments and stories over the courses of the months about how devastating the floods were to people. I was one of the first folks that were down there and looked at the flood waters there. I saw, and it was devastating. It was truly sad. There's nothing more heartbreaking to see basically a low income community. I was in the Rock Springs area. It also hit other areas, but it was heartbreaking to see folks that had so much water in their house they couldn't get in their doors. You've seen people that were being taken out by the fire department. And I want to tell you, I'm sorry for what the community has gone through. And it's truly unfortunate that some have to not only deal with the flooding, but a long legal process after that. It's very unfortunate. And what I do want to say is I actually hope that this process ends quickly and fairly. And I'm going to tell you, I know our board of directors wants the same thing. So under my leadership, I'm hoping that's where we go. I believe we're going to hopefully get to where we need to be, and this thing is going to end. It's going to end fairly and hopefully quickly. And I want to know, excuse me, I want you to know that Valley Water is here to serve everybody in our community. I don't care what walk of life you come from. I don't care what you look like. If folks know me, they know that I come from, like I said, a civil rights and environmental justice background. I'm not going to let any person of color, no one on the lower socioeconomic rungs be left behind. We need to make sure we've been looking out and that we are looking out into the future for everyone. That hasn't always been done at Valley Water, but I think under the leadership that we have now and me and under the board of directors is definitely where we're heading. We are correcting some of the I call them mistakes that we've made in the past of not investing in certain neighborhoods because of cost benefit ratios. And I think that things that we're going to be doing will allow us to correct those wrongs and invest in the communities where we should be investing in with local projects. Now, moving on to the parallel East Central pipeline projects, often a lot of what we do, people don't see. They see it because you might see the cones, you might see the trucks, and you might see what you see like here on the picture here, where it involves us installing pipelines. Well, this project involves the inspection and replacement of distressed water pipeline sections and supporting components along the parallel East and Central pipelines. These inspections and repairs improve the system's reliability and efficiency so they can continue to deliver safe, clean water to all of the residents of Santa Clara County. Now, this work is going to occur in several phases. The first phase is going to be completed in first phase was completed, in spring of 2019. And the next phase is going to begin and be completed by the winter of 2021. The work on the Central Pipeline will be located in the southern portion of Vice Chair Estromera's district in District 6. So this will be not too far from where I'm actually located in terms of where the work's going to be. Let's move on to the Lower Silver Creek Interstate 680 to Lake Cunningham project. Now, this completed project provides flood protections to 3,800 homes and businesses near Lower Silver Creek. In 2019, improvements to the Cunningham Detention Facility were completed and will work together with flood protection improvements along Lower Silver Creek to reduce the risk of flooding to those homes and businesses. This is a project that I'm personally proud of. This is a project that during the last economic downturn, Vice Chair Estromera at the time joined me in Washington, D.C. We met with some individuals from NRCS, it's the Natural Resource Conservation District, and we said that we have a project that we believe could be funded under stimulus funding. This program was shelved, it wasn't moving anywhere. they were thinking, can we really do this project? And they gave us a little bit of money at the time to move this thing along. What they learned, and they saw that we could actually complete projects. By the time we kept moving with this project, this became NRCS's #1 funded project in the nation. They continued to give dollars to us in order to get it done. And what you see is this project right here, showing we know how to get things done, and we know how to protect the communities, not only on the east side, but every side, because we're committed to getting these projects done. Let's move over to the Upper Penitencia Creek flood protection project. Actually, going back to this one before you move on, you know, Valley Water is currently working with FEMA to review and update the flood zone designations for this area, and that's a good thing. So that means some folks are going to be removed out of the floodplain. That means the insurance that these homes are paying for hopefully will go away, and you'll see the full benefit of these projects as long as we're able to continue to maintain them. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to Measure S. Albert, we can go back to Upper Penitencia. So this project will currently reduce flood risk to about 5,000 homes, schools, and businesses, maintain and enhance water supply, improve habitat, and increase recreational opportunities. The project itself is located within District 6. In 2021, the project will move into design phase for phases 1 and 2, which stretches from Coyote Creek to Capitol Avenue, and expected to take about 3 years to design. And in the early design phase, we'll be hosting another public meeting for everyone's input. And so be sure to sign up to receive notifications on future meetings and other project updates by visiting the project page on the Valley Water website. And I know you'll also have the information that will be placed hopefully in the chat box, so you know where you can sign up to receive information for that. And then finally, I want to talk about something, well, it's going to incorporate a few different topics in here, but the best way to describe Measure S and what's contained in Measure S is to play a short video. I think the video describes it much more succinctly than I can. So Albert, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to hit play on the video. The video is about a minute and a half, and then I'll talk a little bit after we're done.
What is the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program? The Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program was overwhelmingly approved by 74% of Santa Clara County voters in 2012. The program identified 5 priorities developed in collaboration with thousands of residents and stakeholders. Priority A, a safe, reliable water supply. Building sustainable, locally controlled water supply projects that are resilient to emergencies, disasters, and droughts. Priority B, reduce toxins and contaminants in our waterways. Providing a safe and clean supply of water, ensuring our waterways are protected from toxins, contaminants, and pollution. Priority C, protect our water supply from earthquakes and natural disasters. Protecting our water supply, water quality, dams and flood protection channels from public emergencies, earthquakes, natural disasters, and climate change. Priority D, restore habitat and provide open space. Protecting our natural areas by working to restore habitats along creeks and the bay. Priority E, provide flood protection. Funding projects that protect our homes, schools, and businesses from the threat of floods. The program helps us care for waterways and provide flood protection to homes, schools, and businesses. As we contend with public emergencies, natural disasters, population growth, and uncertain future water supplies, we are exploring how to replace and renew the existing program to address these challenges.
All right, thank you, Albert, for playing that. In building this program, we gathered input from over 21,000 community members. 17,000 said exactly what they wanted to see in being able to ensure that we were moving forward with this project and all the priorities that you've heard. I can tell you that me and my family will definitely be voting yes on this, and purely why will we be doing it? Not only am I a member of this community, but I know that we benefit from this and benefit from this into the future. So like I said, I'm a resident here. I'm not voting for this as me and my family because I work at Valley Water. I'm doing this because it's the best thing for the community moving forward and for me and my family. So one of the things that it contains, and for those of you that live where I do and live along Coyote Creek area, that one of the largest complaint we get is in and around homelessness. And that is not just along Coyote Creek, that's Guadalupe Creek. That's last night we were in the Almaden area and we were talking about the homeless issues in the Almaden area. We understand what's going on, and the increase in homeless activities along many of the large creeks throughout the county, it's challenging for us as well. And unfortunately, there is no easy solution. Several agencies, including Valley Water, we're trying to get together right now and look at what are some of the possible solutions that we can do in order to engage and to deal with homelessness. One of the things that we put into this ballot measure, and what we saw was the expenditures for homelessness. In 2000, when we put dollars in for what we believed it would take to clean up homeless encampments, we put in enough dollars that we thought would last for about 10 to 15 years. We blew through those dollars before 8 years was up. By the time we got into Safe Clean Water 2, which we're in right now, we tripled the money. We said, there's no way we can blow through what we tripled in what we spent. Well, let me tell you this, we blew through those dollars in the first 5 years of the program. What we're taking away from now, every dollar that we spend on homeless encampments and the removal are dollars that we take away from critical safe clean water projects in the community, flood protection projects which protects our very community, looking at restoration projects and environmental justice projects in this very community, the removal of trees and blockages in our community. So what we're trying to do with Measure S is including not only enough dollars to deal with the removal of homeless encampments that we hear so much for, not only including dollars to provide for safe, clean water and natural flood protection, but what we're doing different is we will not just have dollars that remove the encampments, but we're going to include about $500,000 for social services so we can act in a humane and humanitarian way of bringing in social services that help to permanently remove these people off of the waterways so that they're not continuing to come back to the waterways. We believe we've been doing the same thing for 20 years, and if you continue to do the same thing and all you do is get more and more of it, what is the old saying goes? If you continue to do the same thing and you get the same results and you think you're going to get a different result, that's the definition of insanity. We're asking for the community, help us do something different so we can make sure that these projects work for you and for you in the community. So I want to thank you again for joining us tonight, and I want to go ahead and open up the floor to questions. I do see that we do have a couple of two in there, and so hopefully we'll be able to deal with those.
All right, great. Thank you, Rick. And this maybe relates to your recent comments on homelessness and dollars keeping up with the costs. So I have a question from Trish here. The parcel tax sign on our property tax bill has grown from $39 in 2000 for clean, safe creeks to over $60 now for safe, clean water. The Protect Every Drop Miller from the Yes on S committee says without raising taxes. What is that inflation adjustment increase if it isn't raising taxes? What am I supposed to call it? And before you could answer, I'm going to remind folks, please put your questions in your Q&A portal. All right, go ahead, Rick.
Well, I'm not going to speak for the Yes on Measure S committee because this is not a Yes on Measure S call. However, I will answer the questions. And I'm going to point this to you, Trish. Were you making the same money in 2000 that you were making in 2020? Were your costs the same? Were your grocery bills the cost the same? Was the cost to build and buy a car the same? So if we were expected to basically be able to build the same projects, pay the same kind of construction rates and deal with the homeless, I think that folks heard me talk about the cost of removing camps, the cost of protecting the environment, the cost of providing for environmental justice. This is the things that we're trying to do for this valley. Since 2000 and now, we learned in 2012 that Anderson Dam was seismically not fit. So what were we supposed to do? Remove all the flood protection and bring it over to Anderson Dam? What were we supposed to do? Ignore the fact that we did not, in 2000, it did not include Coyote Creek. In 2012, Director Esther Merritt and I had to force dollars into for basically studies for Coyote Creek because they were left out because of the cost-benefit ratio, because the people there, their homes didn't cost enough. So when we talk about the fact that we need to basically collect more money collectively to the community to provide for environmental justice, to ensure that we are providing for costs to basically keep dollars from removing out the creeks, yes, indeed, there was an increase in cost because you had a slight increase in taxes, an increase in the measure cost itself when it went up. However, this measure does not increase taxes. The same exact cost that you're going to be paying today is the same cost that you're going to be voting on, is going to be the same cost that it is next year. In fact, the board of directors voted this time, they did not want to increase any cost, even for the cost of living, knowing we're going to lose dollars and not being able to do the same amount of projects as we were. So no, this is not about increasing costs. And I don't like the fact to see when people are out there trying to twist words and misrepresent what's occurring to make people think that, oh yes, we should vote a no on this, when they know that these projects are all going into the community that I live in. I'm not coming from Palo Alto to tell the people in South San Jose what to do with those dollars. But let me tell you this is my community, and this is why I'm supporting this.
All
I'm
right,
looking
thank
at Director
you.
Samara to see if he has anything else on there. I'll keep going.
Well, as you mentioned, we have tried in every way to be responsive to the community. This is our third measure. When we started with our first measure, we found that at that particular point, which was now almost 12 years ago, the federal government stepped out of supporting us in many of our projects. Not only the projects that had a problem with this fictitious ratio that they used, but altogether they were getting out of the business of helping folks with flooding. And because of that, we had to find new sources of how we were going to protect our community. So we have to go to the community and say, what do you want us to do? And the community said, by supporting our measure, 2/3, that they wanted us to fund the projects in the community. If no one else would, then they would. And that's what's happened. This is the second time now that they've done that. They increased their support substantially in the second one. And now we're on our third one. Now we can't predict it, what were we doing last year? Could anybody tell me besides the president in January about COVID? Nobody knew about that. What about last year in November? Who knew about COVID? Things can change in the reality that we live in the safety requirements and responsibilities that we have to the community. Things can change overnight. I was in New Orleans just to go visit how and what happened there after Katrina. That's the reason why we have to fix our dams, because Katrina taught us that there's some very serious problems with these kinds of dams that we built at a time when that was the state of the art. But after Katrina, we discovered that there were tremendous problems with some of the building blocks that we used. Again, who contemplated that would happen? In fact, what happened in Katrina was that they were built, the protections there, and the walls were built there, flood walls were built so water wouldn't go over. But so, yeah, the water didn't go over. You know what happened? The walls melted. That's when we found out that we better check and see what materials we have used for our dams, because that could happen. We never contemplated that. So that's what happens with public officials who want to be responsible to the community. We can't predict what will happen next year, in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years. That's why we need the kind of funding that we're asking the community. We're telling the community that we can meet our responsibility, but we need their support. And then we ask them, what are the most important issues that they have? What are the most important needs that they want us to address, that they are willing to finance? That's what this measure is about. And they will tell us in November. If we don't get the funding that we have, we don't do those projects. So this is not a game. This is very serious business. Yeah, we can keep going back to the people, but at some point, we have to be able to carry out our responsibilities. So that's what the measure is about.
Thank you, Director. Albert, what else we got?
All right, thank you. And so we have a question from R. White. All the new water supply projects, Pacheco, Delta Tunnel, Los Vaqueros Reservoir, Sites Reservoir, etc., are going to be very expensive. One of the biggest social justice problems facing us is rising utility rates, including increasing water rates. How will Valley Water keep rates reasonable for low-income people who don't qualify for the reduced rates program? 8 to 10% increases per year is just too much.
All right, Mr. and Mrs. White, I'm not sure if this is R. White. That's an actually excellent question. You do name a lot of the projects are there. None of these projects, except for Pacheco has a teeny tiny bit in the Safe Clean Water measure. They are going to be expansive. When we talk about water rates and keeping water affordable, that's exactly why we supported Senator Harris's bill that she was pushing forward to do exactly this. How do we make sure that we're keeping rates affordable? One of the things that I'm part of is the environmental justice movement to make sure that during COVID that nobody has their water turned off. And this is happening throughout the nation where people saying that they're going to turn the water off. For Santa Clara County, if you look at our rates in terms of where we land in terms of our water and our water affordability rates, we're actually at the bottom 1/3 in terms of affordability. Our board is not only looking at long-term ensuring reliability for water, but also affordability for water. So is that a social justice issue? Absolutely. And I can tell you, as I sit in this seat, the one thing that I will do is trying to make sure that we provide the best opportunities, not only for environmental justice and social justice issues like this, but we also look at affordability and quantity. The worst thing that we could ever have is what's going on in other portions of this nation where they're having discussions still about turnoffs. Well, what is the one way that you want to basically be able to deal with COVID is make sure that you wash your hands and you keep things clean. That shouldn't even be a discussion that we're in. But this is one thing I can tell you that we are committed to. Our board is going to be entertaining an environmental justice policy probably in the November, December timeframe. We're right in the middle of adjusting everything that we're doing in terms of looking at racial equity, diversity, inclusion under my leadership. We've started a new office to deal with these very issues. So these kind of issues, I can tell you, we are committed to, I'm committed to, the board's committed to, and we'll continue to make sure that we keep water affordable for everyone.
All right, thank you, Rick. All right, moving on to a question from Joshua Alvarado. And just as a reminder to people, you can also raise your hand to ask your question verbally. And for those on Facebook Live, you can also comment as well. Joshua Alvarado asks, what are the implications if Measure S does not pass? How would Valley Water fund their planned projects?
And Joshua, that's a very good question. I really appreciate that question. As Vice Chair Esther Merritt pointed out, if you don't have the funding, you don't build projects. That is the reality. The way that the Coyote Creek project, the project, at least the community where I live, the way the Coyote Creek project was funded right now in order to basically be able to bring it up to the flood of record was they grabbed the money from the Upper Penitencia project and took it from reaches 4, 5, and 6 in order to bring it to the Coyote area. So now you have another community that's going to be screaming and yelling that they won't have the projects done, and they have an expectation that they're going to get what was promised to them. However, we saw a situation in Coyote which needed it now. As I mentioned, the only reason we were able to even see steady dollars in Coyote was because at the time I was building the program, I got a lot of pushback internally saying the benefit cost ratio doesn't make. For me, all I hear when you say the benefit cost ratio is the poor people, the Black and brown people, the people on the lower socioeconomic rungs. They don't deserve this because we've got to go to another race where the benefit cost, that means the benefit that you get for protecting the cost of the housing, the infrastructure is better there. So what Director Esther Merritt did with me at the time and with George Shirakawa Jr., who was on the city council, said, we're going to support and make sure that we get dollars into protecting this community. So what are the implications if Measure S doesn't pass? Well, the projects that we're talking about, we can't build. The homeless, as I told you, we ran out of homeless dollars in the first 5 years. The dollars that we're currently using for homeless encampments come from other projects, comes from operations and maintenance, and restricts our ability to do things. The story that I've been telling folks, and this is a true one, we don't have operations and maintenance dollars in order to maintain our projects. People said, really? Well, this is the truth. Last week, we just had a meeting with those out in Alviso. I think I mentioned this. In 1982, Alviso saw almost 10 feet of water where they flooded that area. In the late 80s, early 90s, Valley Water built the project there. And since then, you know what? We haven't maintained it. Just last week, I had a meeting with those communities to tell them, because we didn't have the dollars to maintain this project, you are back in the floodplain. So everyone is basically from Gold Street all the way up to, I want to say, it's basically into the Santa Clara area, they're right back in the floodplain. Those that thought they weren't going to be paying flood insurance, they could be subject right back again to flood insurance. But worse also, they're subject to flooding because we didn't have the funding to do this. Measure S, what we're talking about right now, provides for some of those reliefs, provides for us to have adequate operations and maintenance dollars rather than continue to sit here and drive a car that we know is broken and saying that, oh, this car is broken, let's continue to drive it and not be able to do what we need. We need to take care of this homeless situation on our properties. We need to do it in a humanitarian way. We need to maintain these projects. It's unacceptable for us to say that, oh, well, we're going to rob Peter to pay Paul, put this person at risk for that person. Let's make sure we're maintaining it. The need for safe, clean water in this valley going forward is not going to go away. We've got to basically be able to address it. So what are the implications? The implications are dire. We won't be able to do our job. Director Sherman, I see you leaning forward. Did you have something to add on?
Sure. I think, you know, one of the things we need to explain to folks is that public financing is very complicated, but I think you'll understand because we all have budgets at home. And basically one of the problems we have is that we don't have funding specifically for flooding and for flood projects. We don't have any funding for that kind of protection. It's up to us to figure out how to do it. And in the past, as I mentioned, we've tried to put everything together somehow, some private grant money, some money from the federal government when they were actually committed to protecting communities, some money from the state in grants. Again, once again, where the people have supported some kind of bonding project for water projects. That's how we get it. When the people say, we want these projects, we're willing to pay for it, they vote then for, even on a state level, they vote so that they can fund these projects. And then we apply for funding for those projects. We don't have a separate funding mechanism. With water, we have a mechanism which is called rates, but we don't have that kind of mechanism for flooding. So we have to rely on whatever the public will support us in any way that we can. That's why we asked for this measure. If we thought that we had other kind of some kind of financing that was ongoing, something that was directed to this to our infrastructure, then we wouldn't have to ask for it and bother local people to pay for it. But that's the way the financing goes. And lastly, our projects are kind of, you know, again, just like at home, our projects are basically tagged together. A piece of money from here, a piece of money from there, a little bit of money from the state, a little bit of money that we can get from some kind of private foundation, any money that we can get from bonding measures that the people have passed, any money anywhere. The federal government might have dropped some money somehow in a stimulus project, whatever the opportunity is. And then we cobble that together. And so this measure helps us to be able to provide structure and infrastructure with other projects. So this measure has money that we can, that basically supplements a project and makes a project possible. Where we're not able to have 100% financing, some of that money comes from this measure, but we can't do the project at all. Even if we may have most of it funded, we can't do it. But with a little funding that might be required through this measure, we're able to do a bigger project. Even as Anderson, we can't do Anderson without support on measures like this one, because we don't have enough money from the other sources. With Anderson, at least, we also have water rates, but then we don't want the water rates to go through the roof. So we try our best to balance out the financing. And I think the public will understand that. You understand that. You have to do the same thing at home. That's what we're trying to do with this measure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Vice Chair Estremera. Albert, what do we got next?
All right, we have a question here from Sania Ellis. I hope I'm saying that correctly. In 2012, when I did vote yes for your measure, here I am in 2020 feeling the effect of the flood of Rock Springs area in February 2017. Why should I even do it again? And should I support you again when you have not supported the victims. It's been over 3 years of feeling overlooked, feeling I have been washed away like the floodwaters.
Sienna, I want to start again by apologizing to you. You're my neighbor, and like I said, this is personal to me. This is 1.5 miles from my house. In 2000, when we brought this, they didn't put Rock Springs in there. In 2012, we put Rock Springs in as a study. I wish we could have done more than just a study, and we could have started on on a project that would have been the flood of record, but you still would have flooded, because the flood of record was not as high as the flood of record was in 2017. So in 2017, the floods in 1994 were much lower. What we did see is these atmospheric rivers that came in and just bombed us. That's the advent of climate change. I would ask for you to trust us. I would ask for you to know that we are going to build this project in terms of to provide for you the protections that were there. But even more so, I want to make sure that we can maintain that project. I don't want the Coyote Creeks community. I don't want the Rock Springs community. I don't want my neighbors. And then when I'm not saying my neighbors across the way. You are my neighbor. You can walk down, you can walk out, you can walk up the sidewalk, you see me. You are my neighbor. I want to make sure that we are protecting this project after we build it. I want to make sure that we're removing the logs and the things that have fallen into and would be able to cause flooding again. We can't do that if we don't have funding. I don't want this to be another Alviso. I don't want to look back 20 years from now and say, look, we could not maintain that project because we did not have the measure or the dollars to basically be able to do so. I would ask that you trust us. I would ask that you, and I know we broke your faith and I apologize, but I would ask that you trust us. We were trying to get there and get it done. The mistakes of the past of ignoring communities of color, when we tried to fix it, we were too late in trying to catch up to get it done. But again, we can't maintain what we don't have the funding to do. We will get this done. And as I said, I want all of these victims that have been treated, I understand your pain, I understand your suffering. I want this to end fairly, and I want this to end quickly. I will do everything in my power to make sure that it can from my seat. I know Director Estremera, Vice Chair Estremera feels the same. I wish I could say more, but that's where I am. I understand your pain. I understand what you went through, and I see it. I've heard your voices, and I'm sorry.
All right, and moving on to the next question here. This is going to be a follow-up question from, sorry, I'm making sure. Ms. Ellis or Mr. Ellis says just a quick thank you to Rick for his answer. Follow-up question for R. White. Can the environmental justice policy address rate increases? You didn't say rate increases, you didn't say rates will not be increasing 8 to 10% per year. It is not concerning at all.
Well, the rate increases that we see as a wholesale water supplier are a little different than what you would see from the retailer. One of the things that I think that's good when we're putting together the environmental justice policy. What I'm going to ask you to do, either Mr. or Mrs. White, email me at ceo@valleywater.org, and I'm going to ask you to be part of the discussion. So you make sure that as we're developing this policy and as we receive community input, I'd like to hear from people like you. I'd like to have people like you that are involved, that actually care about communities of color and social justice and environmental justice policies, because it shouldn't just be my voice. Even though I work here, I think it's good to have the residents be able to provide the input. So the answer is yes, we will absolutely take in consideration what's there, but you also need to understand what the rate increases mean for our water rates versus the retailer rates, which is definitely a difference between the two. But I would love to have you engaged to have that discussion.
All right, thank you, Rick. This is another follow-up question. This is from Trish. She says, I don't have a question about the need for an inflation adjustment, but the formula is very clear in the measure. I just want to know what to call that increase if it isn't raising taxes. And this may be a nomenclature question.
Well, it's not really a nomenclature question. I think what Ms. Mulvey is looking for is an answer that doesn't exist. There is no increase in taxes. The independent county council looked at this and looked at what the measure is and said there's no increase in taxes. The rate in 2019, all throughout 2019, is the same rate that it is today. The rate in 2020 is the same rate that it is today. There was no increase in the taxes. The rate in 2021 hasn't been considered and set, but I'm going to tell you this, it's going to be the same exact rate that it's at least until July of 2021. There is no increase in taxes, period. So what's on the measure is correct. The lawyers have found that it's correct. There is no increase in taxes. A vote on this measure is not raising taxes.
All right, great, thank you. Looks like we're set right now for questions on the Q&A portal. Again, for those joining us tonight, you feel free to put your questions in the Q&A portal. Also raise your hand to ask your questions verbally, and same thing with those on Facebook Live. Rick, looks like we're set right now for questions.
All right, well, one of the things I wanted to do is, while it's not often when we have a director out in the community, and this has never happened before, where actually the directors have brought out the new CEO. So I'm proud to basically be able to join the director that is on my ballot to basically join in my community to ask questions. So I have a question for Vice Chair Estremera. Many of you don't know, he joined the board probably 1 year after I joined as an employee. I know I was a lot thinner and a lot less gray, and I think he was as well. But Vice Chair Estremera, you are the senior member on our board of directors. Tell us a little bit about your proudest accomplishment during the time that you've been serving.
Well, I mean, I think the list is long. I mean, just like you, I was a lot thinner and a lot younger. My hair was very dark. And so I've traveled a lot, and there's been a lot of miles on the board. But, you know, our board has changed over the years. Our district has changed. I think our district has become a lot more responsive to the community. We share a lot more information than we ever have. A couple things that I'm particularly very proud of is, first of all, the diversity in our district, I think, is bar none reflective of our community. I think it's the responsibility of all of our local governments and the federal government to be reflective of the community that it serves. And I think that we've accomplished that. We work on it on a very continual basis, and we've maintained that, and I feel very proud about that. Secondly, I think our environmental commitment, I think, is substantial. When I first got on the board, I was told, Tony, we only dig ditches. We don't do anything else. We don't do anything whatsoever with respect to improving the environment. And in the year 2000, as you know, because you led our staff effort there in the legislature in Sacramento to change our act and add a third stool to our mission, and that is one of environmental stewardship. We didn't have that before, and we have that now, and we have increasingly, and now with your commitment in addition, I think that we're just a lot more environmentally sustainable, a lot more environmentally committed. And as we go along, I think that we've made greater commitments, greater investments, and that we're going to continue to increase that. And I felt very proud about that. One of them being what I think is our progress on FACE and our efforts in fisheries, but also and especially our efforts countywide in a recycle program where we have built a water purification center, the largest in the Bay Area, and again, probably one of the most advanced water treatment plants in the state, probably in the nation. Brand new, absolutely first class. That commitment that we have continues. We expect to expand our recycling. We have executed a 75-year agreement with some of our local cities. This is the kind of stuff that government ought to be doing. Different governments getting together, an independent government getting together with other cities to make long-term commitments of 75 years for the benefit of the community with environmental justice and environmental sensitivity, with a commitment to recycling for all of our grandkids. I think that is something to be proud of, and I certainly am.
Well, thank you, Vice Chairman Estremera. I said you're the senior member of the board. I probably should have called you the Dean of Recycled Water, because that's also something else that you are that you're known for. Albert, I just want to check in with you to see if we have any other questions out there that may have come in through Facebook or otherwise.
Look, checking Facebook and our attendee list. I don't see any raised hand or comments on Facebook right now. We're getting clear.
All right. So one of the things, I might go back to Vice Chair Estremera after this. One of the things that we have gotten previous
Actually, we have a raised hand now. Would you like to go with the question first or the raise hand?
Please, let's go through with the raised hand. I want to make sure the resident gets a chance to talk.
All right, so this is actually a series of numbers, and so I don't see a name here. It says 14089. I'm going to unmute your microphone, or actually enable your microphone. Go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead and unmute yourself as well. There you go.
Oh, can you hear me? First of all, I'd like to, I had to step away for a moment, so I don't know if someone brought this question up, and I don't want to be redundant, but if it is, just ignore me. My name's Juanita Wilson, and first I want to say I'm really impressed with the great plans you have for the future, but my question is, what about the past? As being one of the flood, I won't say victim survivors, I would really like to know that that you guys are going to do more than just hope. I've heard it said that you hope they're going to do something. I just, you know, as far as reimbursing us for the things that, you know, some things can't even be reimbursed. The things I lost is just, I don't want to go into it, but just not to be redundant, but, you know, can the water district do something more than hope? If you were in our place, how would you feel? You know, can you do, I mean, can you deal with the lawyers, and is there insurance to cover things? Just what is going on that's beyond hope at this point?
Yeah. And I think it was Miss Lanita, and I apologize. I apologize for what you're going through. You may have missed my comments in the beginning. You know, like I said, you're my neighbors, and this isn't just about hope. I want more than hope. You know, I understand what you've gone through. I saw personally what you've gone through. It was devastating. It broke my heart. And again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you're going through. I'm sorry that you were flooded, and I'm sorry that it's been a long legal process. Some of the things that you asked, I can't answer, unfortunately, because you're represented, and I'd have to send you over there for the representation. But I want to give you my commitment, and give you my commitment that I continue to want to make sure that this process ends quickly and fairly. And I know that the board members want the same thing. I'm not just looking forward, but I'm looking backwards. Sometimes you gotta know where you're coming from to know where you're going. I do understand that. And so I want you to trust me, and when I tell you this, that I do truly want this to end fairly. I want this to end quickly. I want to do more than just hope, because our job is to make sure that you're not just our neighbors, you're our constituents. You are the people that I went to school with. You're the people that I grew up in this community with. You're the people that that keep us going. You're the people that, if it wasn't for you, we would not exist. You are not who we're in competition with or who we're fighting. You are our colleagues, you're our friends, you're our neighbors, you're our constituents. I apologize for what you're going through, and sincerely feel sorry for what you're experiencing. But I do want this to end fairly and quickly. And I want you to know that we're here to serve everybody in Santa Clara County. We're not going to just do things that we've done in the past, and only serve those that are in the affluent neighborhoods. We're here to serve everybody. And folks that know me and know my background will understand the commitment that I have to folks on the lower socioeconomic rungs, and trying to not only fight for hope, but to try to make hope come alive.
All right, thank you, Rick. And that's we're in the clear right now for questions on both.
I got Vice Chair Stramera, looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah, I did want to say a few things. Being in a position of having to keep our mouth shut. I'm a lawyer, and our lawyers always tell us shut up and don't say anything. But I'm going to tell you that we are absolutely committed to making sure that we do everything we can to make the folks whole. This is not something that we can do on our own. And that's why, quite frankly, it hasn't happened as fast as we hope it would. If it was only up to us, I guarantee you we would have already completed any kind of agreement, settlement that we needed to do. There are just too many situations, and so we're going through the motion. We're going through. It's taking time, and unfortunately, it's taking a lot of time. But I assure you, a lot of us on the board have lived through floods. I lived through floods in Puerto Rico when I was a child, as Dick Santos and Alviso, and many of us have experienced this, so we know how bad it is, and we've tried our best to settle as many claims as we can. We're now in as some obviously don't know, our legal process puts us through mediation. And I'm glad to say that we are in mediation now. And what that means is that at a minimum, we're all in the same place trying to get to the end result and hopefully a positive result. That's why the CEO is saying that we're doing everything that we can. We can trust, you can trust us that we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that people are treated right. As he's also mentioned, you know, I'm an elected official. What that means is that I'm a neighbor. I'm not from another planet. We on the board are elected from the community. We live here. We're neighbors. Whatever happens in our communities happens to us too. So we know how it is. And I ask you the same thing the CEO does. Trust us in our efforts to try and make people whole. We will continue to do our best. I promise you.
Yeah. And Director Estromera, and again, Ms. Lanita, I didn't get your last name and I apologize. But those of you that know me know that, you know, the battles, this is my job, but my heart has always been with the civil rights, environmental justice battles, and looking out for communities of color, and those on the lower socioeconomic rungs. And that's what I do as a volunteer. That's what I believe in. This is what I want to basically be able to continue to fight for. You are in my heart. And what I would like to see is Vice Chair Estromera says, we can't always talk about what I would love to talk about, but just know that my heart hasn't changed. The fights that I'm fighting for has not changed. And I don't want to ever see, you know, communities on the lower socioeconomic rungs, communities of color, people that are most socially disadvantaged, forgotten and left behind. We are not going to be the same Valley Water that we've been in the past. Under my leadership, under Vice Chair Estromera's leadership, we're gonna have an organization that's looking out for everybody and looking towards equity and equality. Albert, do we have any others?
Just one Facebook comment just asking about the confirmation of the email. So just as a reminder, if you don't get to your question, or if you don't think of your question now, but think of it later, you can always email ceo@valuewater.org. And that was the only comment and question on Facebook Live.
All right. And Albert, as I'm looking here, we're coming to the bottom of the hour. I don't see any hands. There was some other things I'd like to say, but I do have one more of these that will be, Albert, you'll have to remind me what the next one is.
October 14th, next Wednesday.
October 14th, and we will be concentrating on the community. Actually, we'll be in the downtown San Jose, Williams Street area, another flooded area. So please feel free to join us. Again, it's going to be hopefully a discussion. Like I said, I want to have an honest and earnest discussion with the folks to understand what we're really doing, where we're really going, what my leadership means in terms of the CEO. And you'll be able to meet Director Keegan, who will be sitting in Director Estromera's chair, probably not in the physical chair, but she'll be sitting in the seat leading the director's discussion. So I want to thank everybody. I know we have the debate coming up, and I'm sure folks want to get to watch it as well as I do. And we like to keep these start on time and finish on time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Director, Vice Chair Estromera, I'm going to give it to you to close us out here.
Thank you, Rick. Well, thank all of you for joining us. You're also welcome to join us at the other meeting next week. And also all the meetings that we have, we'll continue to have public meetings to keep you up on all the information, what we're doing, what we're up to, and answering your questions. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And as Albert mentioned, please send us an email if you thought of other questions and you wanted some other information. Thank you again.